name is Jenny, and I'm a wife and mom raising 2 kids. But I used to live a more glamorous life as a TV reporter. I was on the nightly news interviewing pop stars and politicians. So when I said goodbye to TV and hello to motherhood, I suddenly discovered what we moms are up against. We live in a world that tells us to be rich and famous, thin and successful. You know, almost nobody says, "Oh, hey, you're a mom? That's fabulous." But you are fabulous, and I'm here to tell you why.
It's the Channelmom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
All right, love that song. Makes me want to dance. You want to dance? I mean, you don't have to dance with me, Shelly. It's a cool song. They played at Jazzercise. All righty, this is AM 1510, FM 93.7. You are listening to the Channelmom Show. I am your host, Jenny Dean Schmidt. Before we get to our fabulous guest who's going to help us with our teenagers, I have a preteen and I know I need help. I want to tell you really briefly about a fabulous place to vacation this summer that's going to save you on gas and travel time. That's why I'm excited about it, because you don't have to spend a lot of money on gas or, airline tickets and so on. It's called North Fork Ranch. I have stayed there, and let me tell you, it makes for a stunning vacation setting. It's truly wonderful. I love the proprietors, the hosts, Karen and Dean Main. They just get hospitality. They treat you like a king and queen. It's really a wonderful and wholesome getaway for families. It includes an Orvis-endorsed fishing lodge with special perks for dad, including a personal fly fishing guide. There's horseback riding for the kids, among other things, and pampering for mom, including massages, a heated pool with a view of the river nearby. Karen and Dean May, who own the ranch, understand hospitality, as I said. They treat you to an amazing 7-course dinner every night by the crackling fire in the lodge. And if you call them this month, and probably 2 weeks into next month, to reserve your stay, just mention the Channelmom Show, and Mom's stay is free, and that's a big savings. So call 1-800-843-7895, 1-800-843-7895. And remember, all of our sponsors do support moms because they're funding the Channelmom Show, which is big for me. So now we have Terry Rogers, who is a licensed professional counselor and has a huge heart for teens. He's spent the bulk of his career working with struggling teens and their families, mostly as the director of a residential treatment program. So, of course, he's worked with addictions and mental health issues that accompany addictions. Terry currently has a private practice in the foothills, as well as helping out at Aspen Point. Terry is also looking forward to teaching a couple upcoming classes at Colorado Christian. He and his wife, Lori, have parented 3 teenagers, do volunteer work with the youth at their church, and some marriage mentoring. You could talk to Terry about all kinds of things. Welcome, Terry.
Good morning. Good morning.
I really just want to start out about the pressure that modern culture is putting on our preteens and teens. I watch my own son, who's 12, and the temptations that he has from all of those screens. The exposure to video, computer, TV, on average is about 8 hours per day. Kids have more contact with these screens than their own parents, far more contact. More contact with that than their parents, their teachers, their peers. And what I want to know is, are you concerned that Facebook and Xbox and things like that are raising our kids? And what effects are we seeing from this?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. The tech overload for these digital natives is what I call them. These are kids that have grown up with this, and they don't know anything else. I mean, we're kind of digital immigrants.
Yeah,
we've kind of come into this, so we know of life other than this. But so for so many of our kids growing up now, this is all they've known. And like you said, the stats are like over 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen. Actually, what's interesting about that even is that when a lot of kids multitask and they have more than one screen going at a time.
Yeah.
So if you total that up, it's over 10.5 hours of bombardment of just the media, of images, and all of that.
Yeah, yeah. And what does the research say? I know because of the line of work that my husband is in, he has done research on what violent video games do to children, and I know that there's a huge link between boys who play those violent video games and a connection to school shootings, unfortunately. That there's just the overwhelming use amongst those boys who have done school shootings of using those things. Do you know of any other research that is pointing to the fact that these things are not necessarily good for our kids to be around all day?
Well, there's been a lot of work in brain research lately too that just talks about cortisol levels that are developing in adolescence, and the more that they're exposed to violence or even antagonistic scenes, it just spikes the cortisol levels, which kind of drives violence. And what we're finding is it's not just the boys anymore either; it's the girls as well. Boys still more so, but some of the relational violence as well as the physical violence that goes on in our schools.
Yeah. Well, and I think my kids even get, I mean, I do, my husband and I really do try to limit our kids' exposure, but they get their lines and their attitudes towards me from, the Disney show they're watching or whatever it is. And I get concerned by the fact that may have more influence over them than what I may be saying in any given moment.
Yeah, and one thing I think most parents might relate to is if they've ever tried to limit their kids' access to these medias.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm seeing in my private practice and the kids I work with, I'm seeing an increase in anxiety and kind of a jitteriness. It's almost like a withdrawal from an addiction if you limit their exposure to these things. And that's just the way our brains work. Once you get something accustomed on a regular basis, your brain kind of gets wired that way. And what I'm finding is more and more mental health issues related to dependency on these psychological dependency on these things. And we're actually seeing full-blown withdrawal symptoms from kids when we try to limit their use.
Oh, wow, Terry. And can you, what convincing thing can you say, and we're going to move on from screens here in a minute, but what could you say to a mother who's listening who really, sometimes people are dependent on those screens and when I'm cooking dinner or whatever and I'll say, oh, sure, go watch it. But I'm also aware that I need to limit it. What could you say to a mother who's listening today about what the actual impact is and some suggestions for alternatives to letting them constantly text and watch TV and be playing computer games?
Yeah, I'm not one of those extremists that say all or nothing.
Right.
You throw your TV out the window or anything, although I'm not opposed to that. I'm not saying that that's what you have to do. I would say teach your kids how to use it, not to inhabit it. In other words, don't live there, don't dwell there.
Mm-hmm.
Use it for a purpose and then get off.
Yeah.
And teach them that it does serve a purpose, but it doesn't define your life.
Right.
And so the more you can get kids moving and interactive in other areas, I'm glad the weather's warm enough. Get kids outside, moving, all kinds of other things. And there is no substitution for just spending time with the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And modeling that for them.
Yeah.
They pick up a lot of this through modeling. They see us on all this as well.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I just force myself to say, all right, we're shutting this off, and I'm just going to sit on the couch with you, and we're going to talk, which is almost foreign to some people at this point, but it makes a difference. Years ago, I learned that getting down and having that eye-to-eye time just suddenly changes the demeanor, changes everything. So let me talk about another statistic that I've read that is concerning about teens. 17 magazine recently came out with a survey, and I think both of these statistics are attributed to that. 67% of teens, primarily girls, I think, stress about their weight, while 15% of teens admit to physically hurting themselves on purpose, like cutting. 15%. That's got to be in the millions, I would think. We have that many teenagers in this country. And I also know that teen suicide rates are alarming, at least in the county I live in. How is the current culture contributing to these things, and what can parents do to counteract those attitudes?
Well, I think a lot of this goes back to what we were talking about before, just being bombarded with all the imagery in the media, and that's where a lot of the issues with the weight concern, and and that even goes to clothes and all kinds of image issues, which I know you've spoke about a lot on your show, and I really appreciate that. The phenomenon of cutting is relatively recent in the last 10 years or so, and it's not just the suicidal gestures that we used to think it was. Anymore, a lot of this is just kids trying to figure out, how do I deal with my pain? How do I deal with some of the trauma that's been going on in my life? And when I say trauma, I don't even mean it has to be huge physical trauma, but it could be, bullying at school. It could be any number of, parents that are split up or fighting or whatever. And a lot of kids just don't have the life experience to know how to deal with these things. So they find other ways to express that pain. And a lot of times it's also, I've talked to a lot of kids who are just flat numbing out. They're just giving up and becoming apathetic, and at least cutting at least lets them know they're still alive. They still feel something.
Wow. That thought is foreign to me, but obviously there's a great deal of pain out there because it's becoming more and more common, I believe. This is something I really want to sit on this next subject for a little while, because I know that there are a lot of moms out there that are experiencing this particular problem. I have a preteen, and this begins to occur at the preteen level, and I know that you have told me that this is an issue that your wife has struggled with. Bottom line, and I've got to believe that you've got some answers for this. How do we best handle the preteen and the teen's desire to be independent that is coupled with almost kind of a general disgust with that parent that they used to want to cuddle with? I mean, it's an alarming turnabout where suddenly they really just want to be independent, and just about everything you say is stupid, and just about everything you want them to do is wrong, and so on and so forth. Are there some ways to get through this with your child and come out having you love them and them love you?
Yeah, there's actually two different branches that I speak of with this. One is the best thing you can ever do for your child at any age, but particularly the tweens and the teens, is to model healthy relationships in your marriage. Mm-hmm. All the research shows that the more solid and the more healthy the marriage is, the more secure the kids are going to be, and the more that you're going to be able to reach your kids if you can be reaching each other as spouses. Now, that's a whole other issue as far as marriage goes, but as far as parenting goes, a huge shift happens, and it happens gradually, so sometimes we don't realize it, and that is when kids hit about 9, 10 years old, all of a sudden their identity, their view, their worldview, and those types of things start shifting a little bit away from mom, more to a dad. And this is hard for moms sometimes to understand, because for 10 years they've been primary focus, they've been the security and the nurture for their child, and that's the way it's designed to be. That starts shifting gradually as they hit adolescence and move on, and more they start looking to their father to determine, is this world safe? How do I enter my world? How do I make a difference? How do I respond? For girls, how do I respond to guys? For guys, how do I make a difference? And I think sometimes we forget that, and so then and I'm speaking to moms right now, sometimes we try to hold on to our teenagers the same way we did our 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And so we try some of the same strategies of control and educate and all those kinds of things. And more, a mother's influence starts to shift, not so much from control, but from influence. And so some of those mothers that you alluded to earlier in the show, my guess is they weren't controlling those famous people, they were influencing them. Yeah. And that's a tough shift to make sometimes.
Yeah. I agree with you on so many levels, Terry, but I made my husband slow dance with me yesterday in the living room. Nothing weird or perverse. It was just honey, will you slow dance with me right now? Because there was a song on the radio. And my son immediately went into the gag mode and was horrified and disgusted on the other side of the room. And then we said, well, why don't you come dance with us? So we had kind of this little circle of 3 dancing. And it was that funny balance where it really technically grossed him out, but at the same time, when we welcomed him into that, it was almost a relief. You could see his shoulders drop and his smile go up, and he really did need to know that everything was okay between us, and I think that's kind of underrated. People say, oh, my kids are first, but really the marriage has a huge impact on the child. And I'll warn you, we have about a minute left.
It does, and my heart really goes out. I've had extensive work with single moms, and they are just in a double bind there. I mean, they're trying to be everything. I mean, not just the mom, but trying to help fill those gaps for the dad and stuff. And honestly, they just can't do it, and that's where they've got to be hopefully willing to reach out for some help, get other men involved in their sons' lives, and even their daughters' lives. Daughters need their dad involved as well.
Yeah, a shout out to the dads there to step up and do that. Really quickly, Terry, we thank you. Your suggestions are fabulous. We're going to have you back. What's your contact information if somebody wants to get a hold of you?
If somebody wants to get a hold of me, probably my website would be the best place. It's trcounseling.com. And I'd be glad to help resource or brainstorm to give people the help they need. Awesome, Terry. Thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. You bet. You're listening to the Channel Mom Show, where we are celebrating you on Mile High Sports Radio, AM 1510, FM 93.7. You can join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Channel Mom. Coming up next, we have author Carol Ladd, who's going to tell us how to be positive mom. She's got fabulous tips and tricks for being a positive mom. Stay tuned.